Yang.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to take a call on the first reading of the Credit Contracts and Financial Services Law Reform Bill. This bill is sponsored by Consumer Affairs Minister Craig Foss, and its purpose is to strengthen the regulatory regime that applies to credit providers and financial service providers. Mr. Speaker, some lenders are giving loans that borrowers will clearly struggle to pay back, misleading consumers who don't understand the real cost of a loan, not disclosing essential information, or taking disproportionate security. So these are just a few examples of the behavior this bill is targeting. Mr. Speaker, I had a meeting with a Chinese lady earlier this year. She borrowed $15,000 from a loan shark and was unable to pay back. So she said she had been constantly threatened by the loan shark and even made an attempt to commit suicide. So, Mr. Speaker, under this bill, lenders must act responsibly so that consumers will be able to make informed decisions. There will be serious consequences for those who breach the law. This is a good bill because it will promote confidence in the credit and the broader financial markets. It is also part of much-needed reforms that National is making to ensure that irresponsible lending practices are stamped out. Too often, we are seeing cases of vulnerable consumers making poor financial decisions, which can lead to spiraling debt and financial hardship for them and their families. This bill will strengthen protection for these vulnerable consumers, particularly against loan sharks who feed off such people. Mr. Speaker, this bill will result in a new easy-to-understand law which incorporates two pieces of existing legislation, namely the Credit Contracts and Consumer Finance Act and the Credit Repossession Act. Combining both pieces of legislation into the new bill will ensure a high degree of consumer protection, particularly for vulnerable consumers, require responsible lending practices by credit providers, and promote good business practices in the consumer credit industry. Mr. Speaker, this bill is the biggest overhaul of consumer law in a decade and is part of National's business growth agenda. I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Well, I'm going to call Dr. David Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.